Thank you for joining us, everyone, here today at the Arizona Daily Star's opinion page endorsement interview process. I'm Sarah Garrett Gasson. I'm the opinion editor of the Arizona Daily Star. We're here with Sarah Brown, our opinion coordinator, who will tell us about what the mute situation is this time. Sarah, you just want to let everyone know about that?
Yes, so our participants are co-hosts, so you should be able to mute and unmute yourself as you need to. For those of you that do raise your virtual hand, we will prompt you by asking you to unmute, so you should see a prompt on your screen and then just go ahead and allow that. But please also take advantage of our chat. You can ask questions there as well.
And we're here with Jill Jordan Spitz, who is the Arizona Daily Star's top editor. And I think John DiOrlando may be joining us as we go on together as well. We're here for the Ward 6 Tucson City Council election interview. We're here with Val Romero, who is the candidate, the independent running for the Ward 6 seat, and Steve Kozachik, the Democrat who has been in that seat for several terms. So we are ready to get going. What we'll do is ask each candidate to make a brief intro statement, and you'll have a chance to make a brief conclusion statement as well. I am not a big fan of the you have 30 seconds, you have 15 seconds. So what we're going to do is have a conversation. However, I do have my timer, so I am going to make sure that each candidate gets as much time as the other as best I can. And please keep your answers on the shorter side. Of course, we want details, we want explanation, but if you see me waving, that means it's time to wrap that question up. So with that, I will be looking for your questions from the audience in the chat, and I will pose those to the candidates. So in the interest of time, go ahead and use the chat feature, and we'll do it that way so I can kind of see what chain of thought people are having and pose it to the candidates. So Mr. Romero, would you like to get started and kick us off?
All right. Aloha, my name is Val Romero, running for City Council for Ward 6 as the independent candidate as mentioned. So a little bit about me. I'm a Tucson native. I graduated from South Point Catholic High School. Been in Tucson all but 1 year of my life when I went to school up in Phoenix for the Academy of Radio and Television. Otherwise, been here all my life. I have a daughter named Megan. I'm a grandfather as well. I've got a granddaughter who's 5 who just started kindergarten. So that's one of probably my best accomplishments is being a dad and a grandpa. And then just a local business owner. I own Arizona Grill and Park here in Tucson. I've been around since 2005 is when I started our business. And I've seen a lot of change that has happened throughout our community being here most all my life. And I want to see the future moving forward, where I've got a bright future for my daughter, as well as my granddaughter and future generations coming to Tucson and raising their families.
Thank you very much. Steve Kozachik, please go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you all for caring enough about our community to participate in this today. We're going to be talking about a lot of important issues, and today is really about whether or not we have a grasp on the issues that the city is wrestling with. You're going to see some stark differences. My 12 years in office have been all about advocacy, not afraid to grab the third rail when necessary, and very willing to study the complex issues that we're chasing solutions for. I hope we'll talk about PFAS, water security, gun control, the new voice that we have here very recently achieved with utilities on both 5G and TEP. We can talk about the Benedictine and preservation migrants. I can give you contemporaneous updates on what's happening with the Afghans and the Haitians. In fact, earlier this morning was on calls with respect to both. The Broadway widening is finishing up. We can segue that into a broader discussion about RTA. I suspect we'll get to poverty and that kind of an issue as well. I'd like to really make sure that we have time to explore that, and Sarah, sit on your hands a little bit during the answers to that, because again, all of these are really complex issues. When we get to COVID, I'll be interested in hearing from Mr. Romero as to why he's hanging out at rallies with signs equating the COVID vaccine with the violations of the Nuremberg Code, why he calls vaccine mandates fascist, and why he says that he still needs to see the science on masks, and that the COVID vaccine does not prevent us from spreading the virus. If that's not the way out, then maybe he's got a better solution. But that I suspect we'll get to COVID as well, and you'll hear some very stark differences between us on that. So with that, let the games begin. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. So with the all the many issues on the table for Ward 6 and the city at large, I'm curious, Mr. Romero, what your I know every candidate thinks every issue is the top priority, and many of them are, but what is your driving force behind your candidacy online? You've posted a lot about the COVID vaccines in the city. I'm wondering if that's your primary issue, or how you would describe that.
So my core issue would be basically public safety when it comes to our law enforcement and our community at large. Right now, we don't have enough police force for the amount of people that we have inside the city of Tucson. There's a lot of level 1 and level 2 calls that are only being addressed, where other calls that lesser severity are not being addressed. Giving the police the proper morale that they need. Getting training for more police officers in our community, making our place a more safer place where people can actually go out, walk around their neighborhood without the threat, because the crime in the city is going up crazy, especially as of late. And then when the mayor and council says, "Oh, we don't have a crime issue," it's on paper, it's on black and white. They got police reports showing different things within the crime within our community. That needs to be handled ASAP. That would be my number one priority.
Thank you. And in the chat, I'm going to ask that people not have a side conversation amongst themselves, because it's really distracting, and that we treat each other as the adults and smart people that we are, and not engage in personal attacks. So thank you for that. Steve, Mr. Kozachik, what is your top priority?
Far and away, the most challenging issue that we have right now as a region is water security, and underlining that is the PFAS water contamination threat that we have right now to our central well field. Since 2009, we've done an excellent job in banking groundwater, but realized that we are not reliant on groundwater yet. We are taking Colorado River water as a member of the CAP project. We serve about 100,000 acre feet of CAP water a year, and we store about 44,000 acre feet. So we're doing well in terms of water conservation. But the reality is that we have Lake Mead at about 37% right now. That's the canary in the coal mine as far as the health of the Colorado River is concerned. Sooner than later, we will be reliant on our groundwater. And that's the reason that making sure that PFAS plumes plural, are taken care of right now, while we have the luxury of relying largely on CAP water. PFAS is a series of chemicals. We know where it came from. We know that the Department of Defense and the Arizona Air National Guard, through firefighting foam that they used, is responsible for the contaminants. Right now, we have either invested or committed over $50 million to containing and remediating the PFAS. None of those dollars should come out of the ratepayers' pockets. We have a Department of Defense right now who is slow walking this problem, and they are saying that they need another 3 or 4 years to study it. The plume is moving faster than the process. And so PFAS by far and water security are the number one issues that we have in the region.
Thank you. Mr. Romero, how do you respond to the water issue of water security, issue of the PFAS contamination? What are your thoughts and plans on those issues?
And on this topic, I have to commend Mr. Kozachik for heading up this and bringing it to the attention of our community and at the federal level. So what he has been doing and bringing it out to the public has been huge. So Councilman, thank you very much for doing that. So I do agree with Steve that that is an issue. It's going to be an issue that's going to eventually help, take place later on down the line. I would stay involved with that. I just don't think currently as media, that would be our first priority.
So you're saying water would not be your top priority?
I'm still with public safety with our first line workers. Once we have a safe community, all these other things will be able to usually iron themselves out.
Okay. We have some questions. Let me, let's see, from Katrina Living Good. Would like to know their views on informed consent on vaccines, as the city council is trying to mandate employees be vaccinated while not citing one single risk to the vaccine or acknowledging the vaccine. Okay, I guess we'll go with what are your views on informed consent on vaccines for city employees? And we'll start with Mr. Romero.
So personally, I'm a believer in individual sovereignty. I believe that individuals have a right to choose what they're going to do with their bodies and live their life. So as far as a mandate being required, I'm against any type of forced mandate on anything that violates your individual sovereignty.
Okay, and are you vaccinated yourself?
Is that required for this interview?
I think it's something that we've asked a lot of the people, candidates. It's not a gotcha.
Usually medical information. I know doctors with HIPAA are not cannot discuss things of that nature in public. So I choose not to answer that question.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kozachik, are you vaccinated?
Yes, I've had both shots.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on the informed consent on vaccines?
So look, vaccine mandates is not a novel idea. If you want to get your kid into K-12 school, you do hepatitis B, you do polio, you do MMR, you have chickenpox vaccines, diphtheria, tetanus. So this is not something this is not a concept that was just invented with COVID. We have over 1 million cases in Arizona now, coming up on 1.1 million, 2,500 deaths in Pima County alone. Our healthcare workers have been working 12-hour shifts in full PPE garb for going on 18 months now, and they're begging people to get vaccinated. This goes way beyond the whole notion of liberty, which, by the way, ends when it affects the health of other people. I'm fully supportive of the city mandating vaccines for our city workers. This is a public service. And when our city workers come in contact with the public ought to have the assurance that they're fully vaccinated and it's a safe interaction. There are over 1,100 colleges and universities right now that require vaccinations. Disney, Facebook, Cisco, Google, Delta, even Fox News, of all places, requires vaccinations of their employees. So if you look at the data, right now, 98% of the current fatalities are unvaccinated people. Current CDC data says that if vaccinated versus unvaccinated, you're 4.5 times more likely to be infected. If you're not vaccinated, 10 times more likely to be hospitalized and 11 times more likely to die. So we owe it to our coworkers. We owe it to the public. The data is clear, it's unequivocal. Over 200 million people have been vaccinated with minuscule reports of side effects. And now children are filling the hospitals. We're living in history, Sarah, and people are going to look back on this time and say that you had a vaccine available, 4.5 million plus people died. What were you thinking with the 50% of the people who are choosing not to vaccinate themselves?
I have a follow-up question on that. Is to the point of, personal freedom and personal choice with your health. Is the vaccine unique in this situation? And are there other conditions, personal medical conditions that you think the city would have the right and responsibility to demand of their employees? And Mr. Romero, I have another follow-up question for you.
You're asking me that?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we offer both a religious and a medical exemptions. And so those are both part of the process. And so if people have a legitimate medical reason to not get vaccinated, we're honoring those. And we have people filing attestation forms in both of those, both of those categories right now. But this is way beyond the mandatory issue. It's a science denial issue, and it's spreading misinformation on social media, which ought to be a disqualifying notion from holding public office.
Thank you. And Mr. Romero, in terms of your position with saying it's personal sovereignty, I think, is
Yes.
individual sovereignty, what you choose to do with your body, does that carry over to every decision a person might make? Is there a responsibility for someone in a public-facing, public safety role to be as safe as possible when interacting with the public?
So based on, again, individual sovereignty, and it doesn't matter if it's any different, whatever you want to choose. If you don't want to wear a seatbelt, it's against the law, but you don't have to wear a seatbelt. You don't want to wear a helmet, you don't want to wear a helmet. It's totally individual sovereignty. So it's a very simple idea, is that let people live with their liberties and their freedoms to choose what they want to do for their lives. I believe taking an oath for city, for any type of public office, especially Article 2, Section 2 of the Arizona Constitution, it says that the representative should protect the freedoms and liberties of its constituents. And that's what we need to be doing, is protecting our liberties.
So you're saying you're also against the seatbelt law, helmet, motorcycle law?
No, I'm just saying if somebody chooses to live that way, it's their choice. It's not me, they'll get a ticket, click it or ticket, just like the thing that they did. But again, it's a personal choice. It shouldn't be mandated. Yes, it's against the law to do certain things, and those laws should be respected. But at the end of the day, what you do with your life, it's against the law to take a gun and rob a convenience store. That was someone's choice. Was it wrong? Yes. Are they being persecuted? Yes. But it was their individual choice. We cannot be dictating everybody how they're going to live their life.
But in the example that you just gave, that individual choice to rob a store creates victims and people who are harmed by that choice. What is
Right.
So what about their personal choice?
Yeah, and unfortunately, if bad things happen, there's bad people out there. If we had a bigger police force presence out there that would deter a lot of these different crimes that are happening throughout the city, homicides, car robberies, all different types of things, but we don't have the proper police force to make sure we become more of a safer city, and we need more presence.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I jump on that, or is it inappropriate?
I want to just, we'll come back to that. I want to say in the chats, I'm not going to ask really long questions because we have limited time. And so I'm doing my best to be succinct and kind of encapsulate questions because there is some duplication. So with the the TEP and the large towers that are planned or proposed, I guess, going through the heart of some neighborhoods in the city. I'm wondering what your position on that is, Mr. Romero, and if you think the planned pathway with the planned towers is appropriate.
So that, along with like 5G, I'm not a big proponent of throwing more things up on our desert, in our desert landscape, in our city landscape. I think bigger than that one, I know that's going to affect certain areas, but the bigger issue is the 5G poles that are popping up everywhere. And they have the two different companies, AT&T and Verizon. They don't want to share a tower, and the plan is to have towers every 300 feet throughout the city of Tucson. The city of Tucson is wired for fiber optics. We can do wire to the house and avoid all these monuments going up throughout our city to kind of maintain our charm, the look of our city. But putting more things up above our city, we need other solutions. Going underground, I know in some situations costs more, but I think that's what we need to do to preserve our charm of our city.
Is that something you think the city council, the Tucson taxpayers should have a role in paying for?
Well, the city of Tucson, we already have the wires flying throughout the city. We already have fiber optics. It's just a matter of getting them there to the house. So all the fiber optics are buried underground already. The city just needs to tap into it.
Okay. Mr. Kozachik.
There's a whole lot of complexity built into the question. Number one, with respect to 5G, and there are two different issues. So I'm going to talk about 5G, then I'll talk about TEP, then bring them all together. 5G, we are prevented by both federal and state law from making certain types of decisions as to where those cell towers go, the 35-foot tall cell towers go. I have been extremely active in engaging with Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint to the extent that they're a player in this, and have finally gotten them to the table when they recognize that just simply placing a 5G cell pole in front of someone's front yard is not something that's going to go well with the community. We here recently instituted a utility manual that has certain conditions built into it. One of them is a very robust public outreach, which they were not doing prior to the manual coming out. Number two, we've got a condition in the manual that says you cannot have your pole or any vertical element within 150 feet of another, and that will compel a conversation about co-location. And finally, they have, if there is existing landscaping and things in the right of way that people have planted, then we're going to compel the undergrounding to happen in the street. So new conditions that are in place right now that are consistent with state law. I can tell you the telecoms have already run off to the state legislature to try and get us blocked again. But we believe that the conditions we have in place are appropriate. With respect to TEP, TEP is planning on upgrading their existing transmission lines from the existing 46 kV to 136 kV, 48 kV to 136 kV. The result of that was going to be a series of 100 to 110 foot tall, 136 kV transmission lines going right down Campbell and Keno, and then making a jog into Jefferson Park neighborhood. We have certain ordinances in place, one of which is a gateway route ordinance, and another is called a scenic corridor ordinance. Both of those require new utilities to be undergrounded. And so I raised a flag that Cape Campbell Keno is a gateway corridor, therefore UTEP need to underground your utilities. They have now pulled back and asked for a conversation. Again, this is the same dynamic as what was happening with the 5G companies, is that because of state law, they felt they could just run roughshod over the city of Tucson and our residents. Now we have both of them at the table saying, let's have a conversation. Sarah, there may be locations on the Campbell-Keno corridor where it might be appropriate because it's already an industrial looking area to keep them above ground. But there are certainly areas where they need to be below grounded. If you run the cost that even TEP has projected for undergrounding everything, it would be approximately 20 cents per ratepayer spread across the entire rate base. So this is not confiscatory, and it's simply saying to the utilities, you need to treat us like something that you care about as a customer, and because that's in fact what we are.
So, Mr. Romero, I'm curious as a, how would you, Mr. Kozachik, has the experience, having had those conversations, how would you approach those situations?
Which situations? The conversations?
How would you deal with TEP? How would you deal with the various cell companies?
So, I know it was passed through Arizona legislation with like 5G issue, but there's a way, we need to look out what's best for our city. AT&T and Verizon don't have the best interests of the citizens of Tucson. You're paying money for your cell services. It's a business. That's what telecom is a business. And the issue with the 5G, again, other than unsightly towers, the safety, the security, the microwave radiation that these things are putting on out, it should be let them know in the city of Tucson, if you want 5G, you're bearing this with these fiber optics. It's not a matter of just bringing them to the table. It's a matter of bringing them to the table, having this discussion, see what's best for the citizens of the city of Tucson, what the citizens of the city of Tucson want. We do not want 5Gs popping out all over our city. We want these things underground. And the same thing, we need to have conversation, but we need to be firm and represent the citizens of Tucson, because mayor and council, their boss is the citizens of Tucson, not the other way around. They need to listen to us. From what I've talked to many people, the 5G issue is not over yet. We need to keep fighting and make them put this underground.
So let me bring this back to reality. We are proscribed by state law and federal law from taking certain positions. But one factor in all of these cost projections that we're getting from both TEP and the telecom industry, because it will cost them more to co-locate on a utility pole, is that what they're not factoring into their equation is the diminution in people's property values. People have made investments in their homes, and they have got to factor that in when they're considering the impact that they're having when they're talking about overgrounding either of those through our neighborhoods.
Okay. So Mr. Romero, you're a business owner. I'm curious, what specific thing what would you take from your experience as a business owner in Tucson to a role on the city council?
Well, first of all, financial accountability by our mayor and council, as opposed to just randomly throwing money here, there for $500,000 for a park, $6 million for a library. It's not their money. We need to be more accountable. I did some research. City of Tucson is $1.3 billion in debt. We're not able to pay our debts, and that debt keeps staying there. I think we paid about $6 million of the 1.9 that we owe. Right now, financially, we are a single city.
Question about that. The debt, are you talking about bond obligations?
The city of Tucson as a whole. And I can grab the information that I've got that from the financial state of the cities, which is a national report that's been put out January of 2021.
But there's a difference between owing money for bonds that have been issued to pay for projects that voters have approved and other kinds of debt. So specifically with a small business, is it easy to deal with the city in things that you need? Is it difficult as a business owner?
Well,
what would you change?
So currently, I believe there is the customer service aspect for the city of Tucson when it comes to business is not been there for quite a while. I know there used to be a business coalition where they would talk and report back to mayor and council. They would represent a lot of different small local businesses throughout the community, which has since been disbanded. I think it needs to be recreated so that small business in our community does have a voice. It's the small businesses in town where people are spending local money. So it supports your friends, families that live in Tucson, your child, your spouse. And when we spend money locally here in the city of Tucson, it helps, it stays within our city versus an Amazon or big box stores. And I understand there's places for those things that we need to still use those. But for the most part, promoting local businesses, spending our money here in town, finding out how to work better with the business community, because the business community has chose Tucson for a reason. We're invested in the community, and we want to provide a service for our community. Issues like this Prop 206, which is great, want to raise the 15 minimum, 5 for 15 is a bad idea for Tucson period, especially Tucson businesses. The cost of living is going to go up huge. It's going to skyrocket. So as a business, as owning a business, financial accountability and finding out what we need to do to promote our community locally.
Thank you. A question, Mr. Kozachik, about business in economic development, business development, making Tucson prosper. What are your plans for that?
First of all, let me explain the budget to Mr. Romero, and you're exactly right, Sarah. The $1.3 billion or whatever figure he's throwing out is bond indebtedness. We have $225 million going for our parks and connectivity. We have another $100 million for our Prop 101 in our roads. And so the bond indebtedness is something that is the same as when you're paying your mortgage on your house. You figure your cash flow, you go get your mortgage, and you make sure that you're solvent going forward on a month-to-month basis. We have a structurally balanced budget. Our city manager with the city council has made some very wise decisions in the last 5 or 6 years. And whereas coming out of the recession, we were facing deficits, we now have cash carry forward that we're working with. So back to your question on the business development. When I started this in 2009, downtown was very undeveloped, and we were facing, as I say, we were just right in the midst of a recession. Since then, we've had over $600 million of private sector investment in the downtown core. We've been creating jobs, and we have a lot of momentum in the downtown area. We need to expand that. And so now we have what's called Thrive in the 05, that we're doing the same kind of thing out on the Miracle Mile corridor. Back when Patrick McNamara used to work for the Star, he's now with the county, he and I worked together and spoke frequently about what's called the Sonoran corridor. That is the I-10, I-19 connection out by the Port of Tucson by Raytheon. It is over the road travel. It is international commerce. It's logistics, it's manufacturing, it's air commerce. That is our ace in the hole. And so we have been working very cooperatively with the county, with ADOT, and with TIA and Raytheon to build manufacturing and logistics positions out there. Because while I am passionate about the downtown reinvestment and reemergence that we've seen, those are largely service sector jobs. And so from the standpoint of bringing high paying jobs, it's the Sonoran corridor is really our ace in the hole. And I'll finish with this. I have been a real strong advocate of bringing the film industry back to Tucson ever since I started this work. My brother is heavily invested in the film industry. I'm very familiar with it. I worked with the county on this. We've got some incentives in place, but what we're about to announce a really exciting HBO connection for bringing series here to Tucson. So stay tuned for that. But the film industry is a jobs industry, and they're clean jobs, and they're jobs all over the economic sector. It's catering, it's transportation, it's room nights in hotels, it's crew. And so the film industry is something that I'm really passionate about too, because there's jobs all over the sector, in every sector. And if I may, he mentioned Prop 206. Do you want me to segue into that?
That's where I'm getting there. We're on a road together. One of the questions from Josh Padilla is with your main concern. I think he's speaking, referring to you, Mr. Kozachik, being the safety of the public and the employees of the city of Tucson, why are only the unvaccinated being tested when vaccinated people have been proven capable of spreading COVID? Although I will say that that is with, it's a far lesser rate, just to be accurate.
Oh, it's minuscule, right? So what the question is,
The
why are
question
we?
is why should the city of Tucson only test unvaccinated people for COVID when everyone is
Oh my God.
able to
No, I'm sorry that I will because unvaccinated people are shedding the virus at a much higher rate than vaccinated people, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, all right, thank you. So a question I have that is coming, it's through the chat, but also something that I wanted to follow up with you, Mr. Romero. You're talking about individual sovereignty, and basically people can make the choice to do what they want, even if it is a bad choice and causes negative repercussions to others. If I'm having a hard time squaring that with your decision to run for city council. Can you explain how, if everyone can do what they want anyway, if that is your core belief, then why would you want to get involved in a city council, which by definition takes actions that control or put guide rails on people's individual conduct in terms of lots of different areas?
So obviously the way that it came out was not the way that obviously I was intending to make, the judge thing. There's a civil society. We have to be a civil society. We are regulated by rules and regulations and laws and things of that nature. So yes, bad people are going to do bad things. Again, what triggered them to do that? Everybody is on their own battle through life, and people making decisions throughout, whether it be things that we regret doing in our life to things we glad people don't know about. So basically what I was just mentioning by saying that was people have the right to do what they want to do, but they should follow the rules and regulations. The laws are put there in place for a reason, but individual sovereignty, truly what I believe is an individual has the personal right to choose what they do with their own person, their individual choices as far as that goes. So I apologize. I went out on some far tangent. No, we shouldn't be going out robbing Circle K's. That's not what I'm saying as a choice. You need to still follow rules and regulations.
But by that logic, wouldn't you have to follow the rules and regulations of being a city employee and the vaccination?
Well, to my recollection, the Attorney General of Arizona let the city know that is not that mandate cannot be enforced. So as of right now, there's a law at the state level, and a lot of times the state level says something and our current mayor and council fights against it, saying it doesn't apply to Tucson. Well, that's not the situation. State laws also apply to Tucson.
Okay, we have a question.
Clarify that, because we're right in the middle of 4 pieces of litigation right now, and they're brought under what's called SB 1487. It's a state law that basically gives anybody in the state legislature free rein to throw a flag on any policy or ordinance of any city in the state.
Right.
We're joined with Flagstaff on one right now. We're joined with several other jurisdictions on fighting these 1487 lawsuits. They brought them about gun control. They brought them about zoning. Now they're bringing them about this.
Thank you. I wanted to get to a question from Jill Jordan Spitz, our star editor. Mr. Romero, you made a comment earlier that seemed to criticize city spending $6 million on a park. As a council member, do you support spending public money on parks?
Well, it was, I think, $500,000 on Ironwood Park, and it was $6 million for a library. So those are the issues that I was talking about. And no, I believe that's part of what the city mayor and council is responsible for parks in the city of Tucson. I take my granddaughter to a park usually every weekend. We go to all the different parks around the city of Tucson. Some are much more maintained than other parks, but you know, that's part of the growing up is going to the park, fresh air, dog parks. I know there's a dog park that just opened up there on Speedway in Maine area. So no, I don't believe we shouldn't be spending money on parks, but if it's a park that nobody goes to, there's been multiple homicides at this park, maybe that $500,000 would go better to public safety, or the so-called fixing of the roads that we've been talking about for the last 30 some years that still have a lot of issues, especially with the maintenance of our current city roads.
So are you saying that, I just want to be clear, I'm understanding what you're saying. You're saying if parks aren't used, or if or are frequently used, or are locations where some criminal behavior occurs, the city should not fund those parks.
Or find a better use of that land versus a park if nobody's going to these parks. It's not a one size fits all thing. We need to analyze this. Is throwing money at revitalizing a park really the smart thing to do? Or can this money go better somewhere else and we repurpose this land for something else?
Okay.
I mean, can I jump
So,
on that? I mean, we have.
We're coming down to about 20 minutes. I want to make sure that I think wanted to touch back on Prop 206, the minimum wage issue that's going to be on the ballot with your election as well. Mr. Kozachik, what is so just for those who aren't familiar, quick recap, Prop 206, it would increase the minimum wage within Tucson city limits, but do it over the next several years. So it would increase incrementally, and then after that be tied to inflation. So Mr. Kozachik, what is your position on Prop 206? Do you support it or oppose it?
I'm going to get rid of these little notifications. They're popping up in the middle of the screen. There, got it. $15 rolled in over time. I believe it's 2.5 years. I had initial concerns about 206 and went out and have spoken to merchants on the downtown core, small local merchants on the 4th Avenue corridor. They are having trouble right now finding employees. They're having trouble retaining employees, and COVID has played a part in that. So from a recruitment and retention standpoint, the higher wage is actually going to help retain workers. I'm going to be supporting it, but I have questions into the city attorney and city manager right now to get some clarity on several different areas. Number one, the impact on independent contractors is not clear to me right now. Number two, there's a requirement in the proposition that the city form a Department of Labor. I want to make sure that we manage what kind of FTEs we're talking about and what the scope. I want to make sure the city is not responsible for being the enforcement agent on DoorDash if they don't pay their gig workers the $15 rate. There are some concerns about private action from a civil standpoint. I want to make sure the city of Tucson is not drawn into, again, being the enforcement agent under those. But generally, yes, the concept, $15 an hour, let's be clear, that isn't even a livable wage. The devil's in the details, similar to the sanctuary city proposition that was on the ballot a few years ago, where I think you'll find most of the council members supportive of this as well conceptually. But we want to make sure that we manage the details going forward, so we're not strapped with a new department and a bunch of civil action obligations. But the short answer is yes.
Thank you. Mr. Romero, Prop 206, what are your thoughts?
I definitely do not support Prop 206. Everybody talks about this livable wage. What's going to happen? Well, first of all, it's hard to find people to work as it is within the city of Tucson. So the cost goes up to $15. Okay, so the business owner is going to have to raise their costs. So when you go in, we'll just say you go in for your breakfast burrito that normally costs $6 is now going to cost you $10. The cost of living is going to go up all across the board because they're having to pay more money for these employees. That's just kind of how the economics of it works. So I was talking with an elderly lady, she's 74 years old, named Gail. She lives at $550 a month. That's all she gets for her Social Security. She was telling me that just recently her grocery bill, because her food went up $9 a week with her budget based on the same amount of food that she's getting, she goes, she can't really make up this $36. And if it keeps going up, people that are on a fixed income are going to be hurt even more because they're 74 years old. They're not getting this new $15 job. Businesses within the city too, so I'm going to say, heck, we're going to go to Oro Valley. We're going to go to Marana, unincorporated areas. We're not going to pay this. We can take our business and go elsewhere. So you'll see businesses leaving the city of Tucson. You'll see people being you say, well, you know what, your job's not that important. I got to pay this person that's a better candidate, so they're going to get this 15, but I'm going to have to let you go. Sorry about this. It's going to create a lot of chaos within business communities. If you read this thing, it's like 15 pages. The devil's more than the details. There's even saying something that you don't even have to have a Social Security number to have get a $15 wage. And if you read past Fight for 15 and you look at all the details into this, this is an awful proposition. If the individual brings suit, say to my employer, oh, this person owes me this back money, the business can't even appeal it. It goes straight into what they want to their enforcement agency, and they can fine the employer a certain amount of money. It's crazy. If you have the time and you want to find out what Prop 206 is really about, read past page 1, read the rest of the whole proposition.
And I have, actually. It's exciting reading. With the changes that the city has undergone over the past 18 months in so many different ways, there are, people are rethinking, how do we approach these sort of big problems, small problems, just issues. People are kind of coming to it with fresh eyes in many ways. One of the things that has been a fixture in our area is the RTA, the Regional Transportation Authority, and that's going to be coming up for possible renewal before the voters. The voters wouldn't have to pass it, and so things are on the table about how the RTA has worked, how it has not worked. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are about changes that you might suggest that you would want. And also the idea that if Tucson doesn't get more of a say in how these regional transportation decisions are made, that the city, should the city participate in the Regional Transportation Authority? Mr. Kozachik, I think it's your turn to go first.
Any 20-year-old policy, and in particular, in this case, any 20-year-old regional policy can justify pay slip. 30,000 foot, 25 or less description. The 2006 voters approved 20-year transportation plan. It was projected to be a $2.1 billion plan, half-cent sales tax. A recession happened in the middle of it. The funding allocations were not realized. And so now we, the city of Tucson, are looking at $282 million worth of our projects that were pushed back to the last quarter, the final 4 years of the plan, that are underfunded right now. When we were wrestling with the Broadway widening several years ago, and many of us were pointing out that it's not necessary. The traffic counts are 20 years old. People are driving and getting around more efficiently now. You don't need to spend $76 million on Broadway widening. All we heard at the time from the RTA and from their committees was promises made, promises kept. This is what we said on the ballot. This is what we got to do. Now they're asking us to value engineer those $282 million projects in the last 4 years of the plan, and saying, oops, we didn't project accurately. So we have some issues that we have on the table. We, the council, have some issues on the table. Number one is weighted voting. There are 9 members, 9 regional members on the Team Association of Governments of the RTA board. We feel that the city of Tucson should be represented both in terms of the tax base that we provide and also our population base, since we're the lead dog on the RTA sled. Secondly, flexibility. The Broadway fiasco could have been avoided had there been some flexibility in the RTA built into the language so that you could have reacted more nimbly to changes in how people are getting around. We also feel that the allocation of dollars should be in terms of project allocation should more accurately reflect what the independent individual jurisdictions are putting in to the plan. Road repair has got to be a part of any RTA plan going forward. It's not right now. And finally, the categorical areas such as safety elements and multimodal elements and those kinds of things are underfunded in the current RTA plan. So right now, the city of Tucson has what's called Move Tucson. It's our own 20-year plan that we're moving forward with. We have also called an election for the extension of Prop 101 for next March or May, not sure which one, but our Prop 101, which is our road repair plan, sunsets on June 30th of next year. So we're sort of juggling 3 balls in the air right now. Number one is Prop 101. Do we or do we not go forward with it? Number 2 is Move Tucson. We are moving forward with that. And that will or will not be rolled into an RTA package, depending on how the RTA responds to our requests / demands. They have a meeting tomorrow. The RTA have a meeting tomorrow. And on their agenda is an item to talk about revenues, expenditures, costs, and how they are going to fund our projects. And I can tell you that if that conversation goes south, we might just decide, look, we'll go our own way and do this ourselves. Because without the Tucson support, that thing's going to fail at the ballot box.
So, Mr. Kozachik, you're saying you personally would favor the city going on its own. What I would favor is the RTA having a real come to Jesus moment and saying, we recognize that we need to make these changes and that a regional approach is better. But if they're not going to do that, then we're not going to look at $282 million of unfunded projects and tell our voters this was a good deal. Let's do it again. Okay, thank you. Mr. Romero, your thoughts on the RTA and how you would change it, or if you would.
So actually, I probably agree a lot with Steve on this issue, and from the research that I have done on the RTA, the mass population of the city of Tucson, we don't have proper representation on the RTA. And maybe that's why we, are getting the tail end of this. I'm not familiar with the Move Tucson that Steve had mentioned. I would be interested in looking at it. And based on that information on what RTA is, if they cannot come together with us to get, I believe the city of Tucson running it on their own. If we don't get proper representation, I think that's going to be the huge part. We need proper representation for the amount of population we have, not just one vote in the board of 9.
Thank you. So we are coming down to our end. I want to give each of you an opportunity to ask a question of the other candidate that we haven't addressed yet. Mr. Romero, would you like to go first?
Keeps muting me. Sorry about that. Wow, I wasn't prepared to answer a question as far as that, or ask a question. No, I don't have a question for Steve.
Okay, fair enough. Mr. Kozachik?
Sure. I'm really put off by your participation in rallies where they're holding up signs equating vaccination for COVID with the violations of the Nuremberg Code. And would you respond to that? Do you really feel that vaccinations for COVID are equating should be equated to experimental testing by the Nazis on Jews during World War II?
So I believe the function that I went to was put on by a Tucson Medical Center, an organization called We Call the Shots, in the medical profession, saying that they were against mandatory mandates. So when I show up to an event, I didn't draw up these signs. I don't write the anti-max, the Nuremberg Code. People believe in showing their what they believe. And at these rallies, people put up lots of different things. There's even a back the blue line flags at these things. There's American flags at these things. There's a lot of things that go on, at different rallies. I didn't put on the rally. I showed up because I supported the nurses and doctors of TMC that did not want to have a mandate that they are required to do something against their individual sovereignty.
Thank you. So we have time for a brief closing statement for each of you. Mr. Kozachik, why don't you go first?
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for the time today and for the Star Board for hosting this. These are incredibly important positions, and we touched on several issues today. We could have done this for another 2 hours and touched on many more. We're your direct touch, the government. We talked about 5G, we talked about the utilities, we talked about COVID and our response to that, but we're your direct touch. And my office is top drawer in terms of constituent services. We didn't even address that, but from all day long, every day of the week, we're responding to constituent outreach. And my advocacy doesn't take a backseat to anybody's on either constituent work or making sure that we're representing the citizens of this ward and this community in a responsible way. We've just gone through 4+ years of some very divisive and personal issues, and I'm satisfied now that we've got that behind us. I want to continue in this role for another 4 years to continue to work on PFAS, the RTA, the 5G, the water rates, for the budget security that we talked about. But I believe in bottom line, I believe in the collective soul of this community. We're good people. We saw that at the Benedictine when hundreds and hundreds of citizens showed up. We'll continue to see out at Casa Elitas. We're seeing people step up and offer their support for the Afghan refugees right now. So together we can and we have achieved some really great things. I'm asking for the voter support to continue to do that for another 4 years.
Thank you. Mr. Romero.
Thank you again for hosting this event. Again, Val Romero, the independent candidate for City Council, seat Ward 6. And because of that, it is a citywide election. So just to make sure everybody knows, it doesn't matter where you live in the city of Tucson, you can vote for the 3 wards that are up for election, in addition to the propositions. My campaign is, because I'm not part of a party affiliation, I don't want to go way left or way right. I want to start bringing people together to have a conversation, be respectful of people that disagree with them, and be able to be more unified within our community. I think we need that more than anything right now. But in my opinion, there's a lot of divisiveness within our community, not just mayor and council, but people on the street and businesses and people. We just need to calm down and bring it together. Tucson is a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. We need to do certain things within our mayor and council to make sure that continues to happen. Again, my key things, making sure public safety with our law enforcement and our fire department, making sure the money that's allocated for our roads for repair and maintenance is done, promoting local businesses and keeping our money here in town, and then addressing this 5G issue. And again, thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much to our candidates for their time and conversation. And we will be back here at 2 p.m. With the Ward 3 candidates, doing this all again in a few hours. So thank you very much. This will be posted on Tucson.com. So you can go back, send it to others who who didn't get a chance to join us, but thank you very much. We appreciate your time.